So why would you learn C Sharp? Well, C Sharp is great, flexible. You can use it for Azure app development, which means if you're trying to become a cloud engineer, cloud developer, or DevOps engineer, site reliability engineer, mobile web developer, this is a great skill to learn. Even if you're an aspiring game developer, it's great for console apps, and it can help you land jobs up to $300,000 a year. On top of that, it helps you get jobs that you work remote from. You can work remote from outside the city. You can go travel to other countries if your employment lets you, or if you have a VPN router like the GLI net. And basically, you can live life on your own terms. It also exercises your brain, gives you more time for yourself, work-life balance, and it's overall just an amazing skill. If you like technology and you're trying to become a cloud engineer or a developer or a DevOps engineer or a game developer, mobile apps, whatever it is you want to do, C Sharp is never a waste of time, and it's always a great investment to be learning this programming language. So let's jump right into it. Type into Google Visual Studio Community. Then it'll be the first one probably. You click download. And then here, we can select whatever package we want to install along with it. And I'll just check everything. And if you have the storage space for it, install everything and do some labs on everything and just kind of mess around and do some studying on it. But if you don't want to do that, you just want to follow along this C Sharp course, the one important, essential one that we need is going to be the .NET Framework package. So make sure that this one right here is selected. This one, you can select that, but you don't actually need it for the foundation stuff that we need for C Sharp. So if you just want that, we'll just select the .NET Framework, install that. Once it's installed, create a new project. We'll start with this console app at the top. Click Next. And you can select a location. You can name your project whatever you want. I've already made a pre-made one. So it's going to give you a couple lines here, something for more information, and our first little program here. So we could change the font size by going to the bottom left-hand corner, or another way to change the font size by going under Tools, Options, and then under Environment, there's Font Options. We could update the font size here, but I'm just going to update it down here. So up here, there's a play button which autoplays and it compiles and runs your program. So if we hit play, it's going to show hello world and exit code 0. 0 means we have no errors. So this ran and there was no errors. So write line here, console.writeLine, is just printing out whatever's in the parentheses. So let's start our first little program here. We'll type in using system semicolon. So what this does, it's like in C, you write include IO stream, or in Python, you can import modules. But with C Sharp, we're just using system. And this basically enables us to write C Sharp code and to use the .NET framework for pretty much C Sharp to find all the libraries and dependencies it needs in order to generate the code that we're writing. Then we'll create a namespace. You can name it whatever you want. I'm going to name it my first namespace. And then we'll create a class. You can also name this whatever you want. I'll just name it program. And then we'll do static void main. So this is our main function block. But in C Sharp, we call functions methods, which are kind of the same thing, but it's a little different as methods have some more functionality towards object-oriented programming. But functions and methods are pretty much the same, and as a beginner you can look at them the same way because the differences aren't very big. So now we'll just write out some lines. You could do I like chicken, and then you click tab to autocomplete these lines. You do I like liver, and you can just auto-generate these by pressing tab. Sometimes it automatically comes up. So now if we play this, it says I like chicken, I like liver, mail mix, please deliver. So if we were to take this line out, and then we just wrote line, then it shows it all on the same sentence. So write by itself just writes it out, but write line actually adds in like a carriage return. It's like you press a space or enter button after it, so you bring a new line down on it. Creates a new line. But if we want to create new lines without write line, we could do it manually. We could do \T, which does a tab, so it adds a couple spaces at the end of it. So if we were to add tabs here, then we could print this out, and you see there's a little space in between all of our different lines. Makes a little tab. We could do \N, which creates a new line. So right after chicken, it does a \N, and then it creates that new line. And just for the hell of it, we'll do console.beep. If you want to hear a beep, there you go. And here's a comment. A comment is a line that a program ignores, and it's for a human to read. So this is just stuff for comments for yourself, to remind yourself what something does, or for documentation, or it's common practice to always leave comments when you're working on stuff in work. So when you read other people's codes, you can kind of know what they're doing. Make it easier for other people to work with your code. And this is how you create multi-line comments. And oftentimes you'll see at the end of a function block in C#, you'll do console.readKey, which basically it makes it so that the program doesn't close automatically. So you see here it's still open, and I have to press a button for the program to close. So if I were to comment this out, you see that it comes up right away. So now we'll talk about variables. So variables are like algebra, and I was never really good at algebra or math. And you know that x plus 2 equals 4. You know that off the top of your head, but if this was a lot more complicated, you wouldn't know that just by looking at it. So the way that you would do this algebra is by doing, 4 divided by 2, and then that would equals 2. So that'd be like the proper way of doing it without just guessing. But I was never good at math, and I didn't really like math. But I actually like math now, because now as a programmer, you're learning how to program. All you need to do is learn the formulas. So now you just figure out the formula to do a mathematical equation, and you figure out how to write that formula in like C# or Python or whatever, and then the computer does the equation for you. Because math in high school, I didn't like it because you had to do pencil and paper, and it was a lot of work. So don't be intimidated by the math and programming, because it's a lot more fun, a lot more easy, and a lot more straightforward. So int x, we're declaring a variable type here. So int is the type, it's an integer. That's the type of variable that we're creating. So we're going to give it a name, which is x. But x is going to be the declaration. And then x equals, we got to give it a number because it's an integer. When we give it the number, we do initialization. We could do that on 2 different lines, or we could do them both on one line by doing it down here. So this method up here, we do declaration and initialization on two separate lines, but this line, we do declaration and initialization on the same line. So you can do it either way. Then we can also do another variable where you just add the other two variables together. And we can also create a new one for our age. You could do double. So double is an integer, but with a decimal point. So integer just whole numbers, but a double is impartial numbers. Then we got bool, which is boolean. It basically means yes or no, true or false. Then we have char, which is character. This is when we just have one letter, like a or an at or an exclamation point or just a C. Then we have string, which is like a string of letters or characters. It can even be numbers, but it's just like something that's taken in clear context. Then we can write these out. So right line, your age is plus age to call upon that age variable, and your height is plus height plus centimeter. We can make another one, dead or alive plus alive to bring in that variable here. Your symbol is symbol, and then your user name is going to be the symbol plus, and we'll do what's recommended here. We'll just do a tab, and then we'll do console write line. Your username is, and then we'll put in that username that we just created on the line above it. So we can see, and yeah, so dead or alive, true. That doesn't really make much sense. Because true or false, dead or alive. It'd be better if we changed that maybe. And then at space Hungarian nerd. I kind of don't like that space there, so let's take the space out. And then dead or alive, your height. I missed the T. We could change this to are you alive? And then if you press true, oh, my program is still running, so we got to exit the program. So now let's run it again. So dead or alive, true. That's makes a lot more sense. And now that username looks pretty good with that without that space. And then we have another variable type called constants. Constants are variables that you can't change later on. So if I try to declare this variable as pi and put it as a double and give it a different number, it's going to give me an error because it's already been defined, and you can't define a constant again. You're just going to get an error. And I've named it with a capital PI because you don't need to name it with capital letters, but you should name all constant variables with capital letters because that's just the standard thing that all programmers do in the industry. It's like a standard rule because when you see that in a program, you see caps lock, you know that's a constant variable being called. So now let's talk about typecasting. So this is converting a value to a different type of value. So this is useful for accepting user input like a string and converting it into an integer. So this could be useful for database entries. Like if you ever played World of Warcraft or RuneScape or something like that. Then you know you have a weapon name, and then like Iron Sword or something, and then you have the ID of the weapon name. So the ID could be like 547. Or if you had like a bread, like a loaf of bread, then you would have like an ID of 30 or whatever. So that's just a way that you can call upon an item ID from a database. and then convert it into the string that it's representing. So we could do something like that, like double iron sword. And double is a number which has the chance of being an impartial number, like 3.14. And then we got int b, which we can convert this to an integer. And then we could type in iron sword. But instead of iron sword, we could just give this a letter A. So in A, we could just pretend it's whatever we want it to be. So just pretend in your head of what you want A to be. And now we'll do int C is 1, 2, 3. We'll convert that to a double, so it's the opposite of the first example. Then we'll do int E. We can convert integer into a string, so we can display 3, 2, 1 as a string instead of a number. Then we can do string equals, let's say, number sign. We can convert this into a character. We can do string I and then put in true. We can convert this into a boolean. And see, these are all auto-generating. Like, I don't even need to look up the syntax on Google. I don't need to know it off by heart because Visual Studio Community is just auto-completing these for me. Really handy. So now if I do get type, I'm calling upon b, which is an integer. It's using that system library that we've used in the beginning of our code, using system, and it's showing int. So we know that b is an integer type. And we see that this is an int 2 because it's a C, it's before we converted it. So now we see that a D is a double, and our F is a string, H is character, and J is a boolean. So now let's put in some user inputs. So let's say we're making a video game. User wants to put in their username. So we'll do right line, enter username. The next one, we're going to create a variable name. We're doing the declaration. And then the initialization of the variable is going to be the console reading the line of the input created by the line before it. So now we're going to do console.writeLine. What is your level? So the user is also going to be able to choose their level, which isn't common in games, but just for this example, we'll use that. We'll pretend we'll make a game like that. So you can choose your own level, and we're declaring the int level, and this is how we're initializing it. So the user is going to put in the value of whatever the variable is going to be. Now we'll do console.writeLine, hello plus username. We'll put in Bobby Douglas. What is your level? Okay, so that's Bobby Douglas. I actually don't know anybody by that name. I don't know how I just came up with that. So anyways, that's how you do user inputs. And for this next one, we're going to be talking about, so we'll create some gold. Like in a video game, you got gold currency. So all this math stuff we're talking about, we're going to do some more of that. So gold equals 0. So gold equals gold plus 2. This is how you would add 2 gold pieces to your gold. So now it's doing 0 plus 2 equals 2. So now we could do gold plus equals 2. And if we hit play on this, then this gold plus equals 2 is the same thing as gold equals gold plus 2. That's the same thing, it's just a shortcut. So now we have 4 gold pieces because it did both of these lines. We started with 0, we added 2, and then we added another 2. So another shortcut is to do gold plus plus, and that just adds 1 to it. So now we got 5 gold pieces. So we had 4 before, we added 1. We could do the same thing with subtraction. So gold equals gold take away 1. So now we took away 1 gold piece. And then another way to do that is gold minus equals 2. So same thing as before, that's like the shortcut to the line above it. And we could do a tab to put them side by side like that. Now we have 4 less gold pieces. And now we could do 1 less gold. So now we have minus 1 gold pieces. So we could do gold equals gold times 2. And that's the same as this above here. We could do the shorter version, gold times equals 2. But one thing that we can't do is we can't do the gold times times like there is above here in the plus and subtraction. That doesn't work in multiplication or division. So same thing with division. You can do gold equals gold divided by 2. We could do gold divided equals 2, and these are both the same way of doing the same thing. And if we do this, we've got this many gold pieces. So gold equals 100, or let's say 99. So if I were to print this out now, it just says we have 99 gold pieces. It doesn't care about any of this stuff because after all that math, we're just saying it doesn't matter what we did here. We have 99 gold pieces and that's it. So now there's another math thing called remainder, where you can do gold divided by 2. So it's like modulo with the percent sign. So what that does is it divides a number by 2, and then it gives you the number that's left over. So like 9 divided by 2 is 4.5. Yeah, so it says 9 gold pieces because we actually have to put remainder down here. So yeah, 1 gold pieces. So 9 divided by 2 is some number that we don't know, but we do know that 1 is the remainder of that division. 1 number got left out. So this next one, we're going to be doing a bit more math. So we got a double y equals 5.67. We got double x dot equals 3. So when there's this one, which is math.pow, which is power. So it takes y to the power of 3. Which is this big long number. And then we could do double b equals math dot square root, and this is square root, so it gives you the square root of this number. Then we have abs, which is the absolute, so the absolute number of y is 5.67. We could do math dot round, which rounds it to the nearest number, so if it's 5.67, it's going to give you 6. Then we could do math.ceiling, which takes this number and it rounds it up no matter what. So it could be 5.1 and it rounds it up to 6. Then we could do math.floor. So you could do 5.9999, as many 9s as you want, but it's just going to round down to a 5. Then math max, you take 2 numbers. So we put both of our variables in here. And it's going to give you the maximum. Which number out of these two is the maximum number? So the 5 is bigger than 3, so that's the maximum. If we made this a 31, then 31 is bigger, so it's going to give us that maximum. Then we have the opposite. we've got math.min for minimum. This one's going to give us the minimum number out of the two variables. So the minimum number out of these two is the 5 because that's smaller than 31. If we change this back to 3, then 3 is the minimum number out of those two numbers. Now we can create random numbers. So let's say we do random, and then you name it whatever you want. Then we do new random. We can create a couple random integers, and we'll give it a range. So it'll pick a number between 1 and 7. So this, I'll actually change this to dice. So let's say we got dice 1, dice 2, dice 3, and let's change this to a 6 so that we can do a 6-sided dice. So if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons or something like that, you're playing with some dice. We got 4 numbers here, and that's because that first number is still calling upon this math stuff that we've been doing. So let me comment this out, and let's re-roll this dice. So these are the numbers that we got from the different dice that we rolled.